Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and today I'm going to look at what they call the corn rake murder, um, and it's an interesting one because this man who was convicted of killing his wife, Todd Mullis, um, killing his wife is Amy Mullis. He's tried for some appeals and has failed to get them. I find out in the internet world that there's a very divided group of people. One side very much he did it, and one side very much he didn't. The side who doesn't seem to think he did it believes that this was not actually a murder, but was an accident, as he originally stated on the way to the hospital with his dying or dead wife. And it's a fascinating case for many reasons. So this one, I'm really ready to do this one. There's a lot to examine as far as the evidence goes. There's behavioral evidence, there's computer evidence, and there's physical evidence. And the physical evidence is the biggest key in this entire case. But I'm going to start out with the story so you can understand what it's all about and how it all went down. But I just want to start by welcoming everybody who's in the chat room. And I think I shouldn't go through the names as I usually do because I get confused and lost when I do that. But lots of people are here. Maybe I will. Anyway, Nini, Lisa S. Florence is here. Alexandra is here. Michaela is here. Did I already say Sarah? Carrie. Benny is here. Let's see. Slit Skirt is here. I love that name. Allison is here. And Gretchen, and I'm starting to repeat people. I know Leslie is here. This is why I get frustrated when I do it because I can't. There's so many commentaries in here that I can't get everybody in properly. And Molly's here. Or if I missed your name, I'm sorry. Anyway, if you'd like to be in the chat room and participate in the live part of the show, all my shows are live for Patreon only. That way we have a nice community in the chat room. So if you would like to join in the 8 shows a month, please do join. Supports this educational channel. It's only $5 a month. You don't have to. All my shows they all are open to the public after I finish the live. And so please do subscribe to the channel. Please do like the videos and hit the bell for notifications. And if you're interested in any particular crime, go to the YouTube search engine and put in Profiler Pat Brown and whatever crime you're interested in, hit the button and see whether I've already done it. And then you can go find that video. Other ways to support the channel are the books below. This is my fiction book, Only the Truth. It's a psychological mystery story and seems to be well loved by the people who read it. So there you go. Anyway, all right, let's get to it. Because I really found this a really interesting case. When a number of people suggested I do it, I always look at cases and decide, should I put this in the list or maybe I'll get back to it. But as soon as I saw this one, I had to jump on it. So, all right, let me tell you the basic story of this. I'm going to read to you, not from Wikipedia today, because Wikipedia doesn't have anything, and it's hard to find something well written, but I like this one. It's a blog called the MidwestCrimeFiles.com. The woman who writes here is Gina Glob, and I'm going to put the link below because thank you, Gina, I'm borrowing your blog to read from, so I want to link your blog to my site so people can read it for themselves and anything else you might have. All right. She wrote this in 2022. I love the opening line. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, farming is the most dangerous job in America. Okay. It comes as no surprise that farm accidents can leave farmers severely injured and sometimes cause death. And I live on a mini farm. We have a horse, a donkey, a goat, 3 llamas, 2 alpacas, a bunch of chickens. And we're in an area which is zone farming, but it's kind of like, it's turning into a little part of the suburbs, but we still have enough land to have these things. We have had a cornfield before. We have had outdoor gardens, none of which I participated in because I'm lazy, but they're there. And we have all kinds of equipment. There's tractors and there's, I don't know anything about farm equipment. There's stuff, okay, all kinds of stuff. And I sometimes am in charge of feeding the animals when my daughter's out of town, my son-in-law, my granddaughter. And the donkey recently, after 8 years, took a dislike to me for some reason. And when I walk in the field, he like charges me. And I'm like, oh, this is not good. And so I worry that I'll get kicked in the head by a llama or something will go wrong. I'll trip because farm accidents do happen around animals, and they do happen on farms where you're dealing with so much equipment. So that something like an accident with a corn rake could occur is not unreasonable. So that's why it's important to bring this up. So many people who make comments on this case who say, oh, he didn't do this and he didn't do that, or oh, why would he do this? Do not understand living in the middle of nowhere on a farm and maintaining a big farm operation. So I want to start with being fair to how that life would be. Now, I'm only saying this with a minor bit of knowledge. I do not live on a farm. I live on a mini farm. So I am no expert, but I understand some of the issues here. So it came as no surprise that, on November 10th, 2018, a 911 call came from Earlville, Iowa, from this farmer reporting a horrible farm accident. The farmer told the operator he was on his way to the hospital with his wife, who was bleeding severely after falling on a corn rake. The operator asked him to pull the truck over and begin CPR on his severely injured wife. The incident took the life of his wife, 39-year-old Amy Mullis. And then when they got to the hospital, the medical examiner ruled her death immediately, that she had immediately died. I'm sorry, it was the medical examiner at the hospital said, pronounced her dead. And then he saw the 6 prongs in her back and he believed it was a homicide. It says here, ruled the death a homicide. I'm not sure that's exactly when it happened. But anyway, certainly when the forensic pathologist came into play, who was at the trial, and I'll refer to her stuff in a little bit, that's when they believed it was a homicide and he was arrested and charged. Now, and he was convicted in a court of law. But a lot of people think that he had a horrible defense. And I will totally agree with that. That defense attorney, oh my God, not the best. And this is a problem with the system. You're allowed to buy the best defense you can, which seems to me not a matter of fairness and justice, that one person can really afford this amazing attorney that can confuse the jury better than the cheaper attorney that you got and didn't do such a good job. And a lot depends on the prosecution as well, whether it's a good prosecutor. Some towns have good prosecutors. Some states have good prosecutors. Some states have whatever they get, and there's more than one prosecutor. So it depends, who gets the case. The prosecutor in this case, I didn't like her at all. I thought she did some outrageous things, said some outrageous things, stuff that to me crossed the line ethically. And again, here we go. We have the prosecutor, in my opinion, trying to sway the jury with stuff that was not accurate or true. And is that ethical? And is that correct? So again, how is this justice, and how does a civilian jury know who's fooling them and what they should listen to and what they should believe when they're not trained? So, but I'm not going to go into my professional jury rant here. I just want to point that out because I do not think he had a good defense. And I think the prosecutor stepped over a whole bunch of lines. So I wasn't too thrilled with her. But what does that mean as far as, is he guilty or isn't he guilty? Should he get his appeal or shouldn't he get an appeal? All right, so I want to read a little bit about who they were as a couple, because this is really important in this case. The motive in this case is all about the wife cheating on the husband. This is the couple in, well, maybe a happier moment. But she had cheated on her husband. I'll read the part about that here. So anyway, she graduated from college and she became a registered nurse. And she met Todd Mullis in 2003 at a county fair. And she married him the next year. They had 3 children, Tristan, Taylor, and Wyatt. And the older boy plays into the story because he's the 13-year-old in the story who was working with his dad. The other two children were back at the house. I don't know if anybody was with them, but they're back at the house. And mom had come out to help them in the barns. And so the three of them were doing stuff together that day. But let's look at the situation about this couple. Anyway, she apparently somewhere around, was it 2013? She was growing bored in her marriage and started to have an affair with a man she met at work at the hospital. All right. When her husband learned of the affair, she quit her job at the hospital, became a full-time stay-at-home mother. Now, there's different stories about whether she wanted to quit her job or whether he wanted her to quit her job. In other words, I don't trust you. You know, you're off at work and you've had an affair with somebody you work with. I'm unhappy about that. And I think it would be better if you stayed home around the kids and me, and maybe we can make a go of our marriage. As far as cheating goes in a marriage, people have lots of different opinions on that. As to it's 100%, if you cheat, it's 100% your fault, in the sense that you've got no excuse. If you didn't want to stay married, you should have separated before you cheated, gotten a divorce, or you should have said, I'm not happy and we should go to a therapist before I start cheating. And then there's those that say, well, sometimes under certain circumstances, people just, that's what they're drawn into because they're unhappy. Some people will say, well, maybe she was seriously unhappy because he was a horrible person to live with. Maybe he ignored her. Maybe he was mean to her. Maybe he wasn't romantic anymore. Maybe their sex life was in the toilet, you know, and so she was swept away at work by some other guy. We could go there all day long. Simple fact is, she had an affair. And she came home. They did go to a therapist. She came home, stayed at home, and worked at home, and the marriage went on. Okay? Credit to him. Yeah, well, maybe not credit. It depends how you look at it. He stayed married to her. Maybe he wanted to keep his family together, the three kids. Maybe, as some people think, he didn't want to lose his farm in a divorce. In other words, if he got divorced, then there would be the whole issue of she takes the kids or she gets custody, then the kids aren't there and his family's messed up, and maybe the farm gets split up. You know, he doesn't want to deal with that, so he stays married. Okay. That's not an unusual reason. A lot of people accept affairs in order to keep the family together and their lives the way they had them. And that's not an unreasonable, no, it's not unreasonable. And if they're willing to try to keep it going for everyone involved, can't blame them on that one. I think that's kind of a good thing, you know, a good thing that you try to do. All right. Now, and that might have worked out well, except for, so what about, let's see, summer of 2018 comes along. She begins to have an affair with Jerry Frasher, who worked for Todd on the farm. According to Jerry, the affair was primarily sexual for him, and he was not seeking a divorce from his wife. So he was cheating on his wife. She was cheating on her husband. She was more invested in having a future relationship. He was not. All right. So Todd finds the phone records and he's like, whoa, what's this? Why are there all these text messages between her and this guy that works, you know, does work on my farm? So he called the guy up and said, hey, what's going on here? And the guy said, no, we're not having any affair. And he's upset enough. He actually calls the guy's wife. And then she said, oh, nothing to worry about. And so he thought, okay, I'm a little crazy here. And that was in, what day was that? That was in the summer of 2018. Okay. This is important as far as when this happened, because there's going to be, one of the things they bring up in this whole motive thing is that on his, I guess, iPad or whatever, I think it was an iPad, there's these Google searches. And you know how I talk about Google searches, that a lot of times before people commit a crime, they Google stuff, not thinking they're actually going to go through with it, but they Google things like how to kill my wife, or how to dispose of a body, or well, how many farm accidents include corn rakes, you know, that kind of thing. Those, if you have those kind of things right before, reasonably not so long before a person dies or disappears. That can be very telling about the fact that the motive is there. The guy was thinking about killing the wife, or the wife was thinking about killing the husband, and or the children, like Casey Anthony, chloroform. They start looking for how to deal with the actual homicide. In this case, there were a few interesting searches, like something like how did Aztecs deal with cheating spouses. I'm trying to see if we have let me see if she has any here as far as these go. There were some searches, but I didn't find any of them particularly compelling, shall we say. There were a number of searches that were on his iPad that might not even have been his. There was something about wedding dresses, which I don't think he's into. His 13-year-old son could have been on there looking up the Aztec stuff. Who knows? But I didn't see anything specific to how to kill my wife. That he might have looked up stuff about divorce and cheating spouses. I couldn't blame him if he was doing that. I mean, if this is the second time he's suspicious his wife is cheating on him, I can imagine being in that situation and saying, just putting in silly stuff even, how many wives run over their husbands with a car, doesn't mean I'm going to do it, but, but just because you get into this whole thing where you start looking up the situation and all the ways people deal with the situation, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to commit a homicide because you look that up and that's your motive. Unless you're looking at extremely specific things, like you're looking up 20 different kinds of poisons that you can get away with, and then the person that your spouse dies of poisoning. Then you get a little more suspicious. But this is the thing the prosecution brought in. They're trying to prove this motive. She was cheating on him. There were searches that had some relation to cheating. And what you do with a cheating spouse. But this was back, by the way, in August. And the murder, when was the murder again? It was in the winter. Was it November? Hold on, I gotta go back and look. November. So we're talking, 3 months later. So this wasn't like a few weeks before, when this is all going down. So anyway, they went on living together after he made these phone calls to find out she was cheating. Supposedly he was told she was not. Although I don't know how dumb he was at that point and whether he pretty much knew it was true and what he was going to do about it. His 13-year-old son apparently knew his mom was cheating on him, because she was like, oh, well, Dad's going to kill you if he finds out, which doesn't mean he's going to, but that's kill does not mean murder in those circumstances. But even the 13-year-old son knew mom was doing something she shouldn't be doing. And this is important in the sense that when we look at the possibilities of motive here, there's going to be the loss of the family. There's going to be the loss of pride. There's going to be loss of the farm. There's going to be loss of a mom for mom or a dad for the children. Loss of for the children of where they're living and where they've grown up. They're going to now maybe be taken to some other location and have to live in a different situation. So there's all kinds of reasons within the issue of a family breaking up that could be motive for anybody in that family. All right. So the whole cheating thing was brought up. The next thing I want to point out that was stated. Well, let me go through the basic of the what happened that day, and then I'll get to that. Okay. So in early November, this is important. In early November, Amy had an outpatient procedure done at a local hospital called a uterine ablation. The procedure is pretty routine, but required, and some of this is excessive bleeding that women go through from periods, and it becomes difficult to deal with. So they do a thing where it's a uterine like scraping type of thing. Some people think she got an abortion. I have no proof of that, but some people think. But whatever, she had a procedure. And the procedure is pretty routine, but required Amy to have a 10-pound lifting restriction, and she was instructed to rest. All right. 4 days later, and this whole thing about the instructed to rest and don't lift anything over 10 pounds. This becomes a big issue about why she went to the shed that I'm going to talk about in a minute to pick up a pet carrier that may have weighed 18 pounds or 20 pounds when she shouldn't have been picking up anything over 10. And this is something they say. I worked at hospitals for years. This is something they say all the time. Don't, anytime you have anything, don't pick up anything heavy. It's not like you're going to pick up something heavy and keel over. It's just a basic recommendation to not stress your body out. Go home and rest. Well, of course, you've had a surgical procedure, go home and rest. But it's a pretty basic surgical procedure. It's just not, she wasn't cut open, So people go and have abortions and go right back to work the next day. And this was an ablation procedure, basically similar to that. They always say, go home and rest. Don't do anything. Don't pick up heavy things because it'll increase bleeding, perhaps. That's why they say that. But it doesn't mean if she picked up something that was 15 pounds, this was like some travesty. That's overdoing it. But anyway, 4 days later, on the morning of November 10th, her friend texted her to see how she was doing. She replied, thanks, okay, things still very tense around here. I'm not sure of anything anymore. So obviously the marriage was on the rocks. Amy prepared breakfast while Todd and Tristan worked in the hog barn. Now, I have to point out something here. Let me just show you sort of, they're out in the old hog barn now. And let me show you a picture of this is the farm. So they had a very big working farm. These are the hog barns here. And I believe the red shed she's going to is about here. Okay. So they're off in one of these barns working, and inside of the barn looks like that. It's got a lot of hogs in there, So they're big football field length hog barns. But what's important that I want to say here, when we get to the day that things happened, remember, Amy is not alive anymore. Everything said about that morning is coming from the father and the 13-year-old son, pretty much. Maybe the other two kids could chime in someplace. But let's face it, those are the two witnesses. And they're also the two that are involved in maybe what happened, unless she had an accident, unless a stranger murdered her. Okay? So everything I'm reading from here on out comes from the father and the 13-year-old. Amy prepared breakfast while Todd and Tristan worked in the hog barn. After the morning meal, Amy joined her son and husband inside one of the hog barns. We do not know this. This is what they said. There were 2 hog barns on the property, both the size of football fields. She emailed her lover, Jerry Frasher, the following message at 10:12 a.m. Do you know what I'm doing today? Cleaning, I'm not going to say the word because I'm on YouTube, light fixtures in the barn. What? WTF. Okay. So she was alive at 10:12. She was in the barn. So this we now know. This comes from Amy herself. And she's cleaning light fixtures. And there's a question about why she's cleaning light fixtures under those conditions, that she's standing on these pails to step up on the pails to reach the light fixture. And should she be doing this when she's just had surgery? Well, 4 days ago, mind you, and a kind of surgery is in out and not really surgery. So theoretically, cleaning lights is not overly taxing. She wasn't picking up she wasn't picking up hogs, chucking hogs around. She wasn't nailing fence posts. She wasn't doing that. So she was doing, I would say she was on light farm work. All right. And now I want to say something about farm work and there's claims that, that Todd, the husband here, he was like, oh, why don't you do this? And they're like, why would he have her even out there at all? Why is she even working at all? Why is she at home with the 2 children? It's a farm, okay? There's a lot of stuff that happens to take care of a large farm, all right? It's a tremendous amount of work. Everybody pitches in. This is all of their full-time jobs, including hers now that she does not work at the hospital. Now, I don't see. I'm not sure what day of the week that was because supposedly the two kids were home. Oh, it was November. Two kids are supposedly home in the house. She's coming out to help. But it's a farm, and he's a farmer. And I want to point that out because a lot of people see it as very stoic behavior. He's a farmer, and you do a lot of hard work, and you get used to doing a lot of hard work because you got to take care of the animals. You can't not do something. You got to get it done, or your farm doesn't function. So that she goes out and is going to stand on some things and clean something. It's not like she was being sent to the gulag to be tortured. It's pretty minor. All right, but so at 10:12, we know that she's cleaning some stuff. She ain't happy about it, but then she's not happy about her life at all. I think, we have to look at one of these possibilities that she was a nurse working in the hospitals, and suddenly she becomes a farm wife. Maybe she thought that was cool at the time, but maybe after a while, being a farm wife wasn't what she wanted. She's thinking, my God, what have I signed up for? Happens. You find you're in a lifestyle you don't really want. Maybe you marry a military person and then you realize I don't really want to live on a military base in Kuwait. This sucks. Things happen that make you unhappy. So anyway, she's not happy this morning. We do know that. Amy now communicated via an email with Jerry to avoid suspicion from Todd. So she was still invested in this relationship. Todd was already suspicious, and she was moving forward with it, which is unfortunate. Amy came out to help them prepare for a load of piglets that were expected that afternoon. Again, now we're back to this is what they say. I just have to point that out, whether it's true or not, because a lot of times people just assume it's true, but it's not necessarily so. I didn't do the interviews, the interrogations. I would like to do that to make sure everything makes sense. Everybody's on the same page. Maybe the police did this, but I don't have that information. They were expecting a load of piglets. Tristan was bringing in heaters for the piglets while Todd set up nipple feeders. He asked Amy to clean the light fixtures. To reach the light fixtures, Amy was standing on a 5-gallon bucket. Tristan and Todd both said she seemed unsteady, and they suggested that maybe she'd go inside and lie down instead of helping. Okay. Todd asked Amy to get a pet carrier out of their red barn on her way back to the house. He explained he was going to put a litter of kittens in the carrier so he wouldn't hit them when he backed up a piece of machinery. There's a whole issue about where those kittens were and why you need to get the kittens out of there. Some people ask, well, why did he ask her to do that? I mean, you got a 13-year-old kid. Why don't you just send him over to the dang red barn? Let me show you the red barn. Okay. So this is the red barn. And that door is kind of frozen that way, so you have to kind of get yourself in there. And up on one of these shelves is this pet carrier. All right, which I've had pet carriers, and I don't know what weight this was, but it's up on a shelf, and all she's going to do is pull it down and carry it out. It says put it in the yard or on the porch. I don't know how far away that is. I don't know, again, why he just didn't send his 13-year-old son out to do it. Or he could have sent his 13-year-old son out to do it. He could have said, hey, go with mom and get that pet carrier out. She'll help you out, and then she'll go back to the house and you bring back the pet carrier or put the pet carrier wherever. That could have happened. We don't know. All we have is this story that Todd said, why don't you get that pet carrier out? And I'm going to stand up for Todd here in this instance. Again, I don't think this was an unreasonable thing to ask. She was headed toward the house. This is on the way. Maybe he just wanted her to get it out of there because he was so busy. Get it out of the thing, honey, and just put it where I can see it, and then just go to the house. And again, we're on a farm. People do a lot on a farm. So did Todd tell her to do that? Maybe. And was it cruel if he did? I wouldn't say so. So off he goes. So she goes off to this red barn, to get the pet carrier. She never leaves that location. And the timing here is going to be very, very important. I'm going to bring that up later. So he tells her to go do that. Then it says, Tristan and Todd continued to work in the barn for the next hour and a half. Why is this important? Because the claim here is that after she goes to get this item, this pet carrier, an hour and a half passes after that point. So she goes to the barn immediately. I mean, this red shed thing immediately, and does not leave it for an hour and a half. So something had to happen to her relatively quickly, that she's not wandering around the property. She's not back up at the house. She didn't get the pet carrier out. She never leaves this. And if she went directly there, then whatever had to have happened to her right then. And this is going to be a very important part in a little bit. All right. So then after an hour and a half goes by, supposedly, he looks over there and he knows the pet carrier, that's Todd, is not in the yard or on the porch as he asked Amy to do. So he told Tristan to go get the pet carrier out of the red shed. Now, there's two stories on this. One story is that he told Tristan to go find his mother in the red shed, which after an hour and a half has passed would be kind of a weird thing to ask your son to do. I don't know the validity of him actually saying that. The other story is he asked his son to go, hey, just go get the pet carrier. I don't see it out there. Maybe your mother just went on to it. Maybe she tried and it was too heavy. She went on to the house. Maybe she just said, screw it, and went on to the house. Please go get the pet carrier. That would be more rational if this much time had passed by. So he goes to the red shed and he finds his mother lying on her hands and knees. And this is also very important, lying on her hands and knees. And this statement about how she was, I wish I had a crime scene. Well, there is no crime scene photo of her when he found her because her body was removed from the red shed, mind you. So she's supposedly on her hands and knees, which is an odd position to be in. So I think, what does he mean by that? She's obviously not lying totally down like this. So she's got to have some knees here and maybe have her hands out in front. Maybe just her collapsed like this on her knees with her hands like that. Don't know. I would, if Tristan I were questioning him, I'd want to get a real exact picture. And I want to get that exact picture from Todd as well, because then Todd went there and he saw her in the same exact position. So I'd want to know all these details. The corn rake was supposedly sticking out of her back. Again, how was it sticking out of her back? I've heard it isn't on an angle. So it wasn't straight in her back with the handle going straight back. It was more like it was at an angle and like this. So kind of an awkward thing where the handle was pointing out in a funny direction, where if it were straight, he could have just picked her up and pulled her out of the shed, but it was like blocking the shed and door like this. So I would like to know the exacts on that, but I don't have that. So when Tristan approached the red shed, he found his mother lying on her hands and knees with a corn rake protruding from her back. Tristan says he checked her pulse and checked her breathing, which I find kind of odd for a 13-year-old, because if I saw my mother with a corn rake in her back lying there looking dead, I think I'd just scream for dad and skip the other part and wait for dad to get there. But maybe he's worked around a lot of animals and has had to deal with certain things. But okay, so then he yelled for his father, who hurried over. Todd instructed his son to get the truck and bring it over. While he waited for Tristan, he did not render aid nor call 911. He did, however, pull the corn rake from her back, which he said was necessary in order to get her out of the narrow passageway in the shed. Now let me show you what it looks like in the shed. It really is a very narrow thing, and he's got to get her through that frozen door. So if he wants to, this is the corn rake. If he wants to get her through the door, he does have to remove the rake from her back. That's just a fact, okay? So he's in this darkish place at the moment. I don't know if they have a light in there. I don't know what the situation is. But if he's going to get her out, he's going to have to remove the corn rake. A lot of people say, oh, he did that to hasten her death. Because anybody knows that if you pull the rake out, that might be holding back bleeding. When you pull it out, the internal bleeding happens faster. But she's in this red shed thing here. And, he's got to get her out of there. He does. And he gets on the road. Okay. So he doesn't call 911. It's true. He jumps on the road and he's heading in the truck toward the hospital. Now, a lot of people live on farms say that's exactly what they would have done. This is not abnormal. Now, he told Tristan, go get the truck. And first of all, some people are going to say, well, why was Tristan driving? He's 13. It's on a farm. I'm pretty sure Tristan can drive most of the vehicles on that farm. maybe off of the farm, but he's not legally allowed off of the farm. But a lot of teenagers, even younger ones, can drive vehicles on a farm. So Tristan goes and gets that. He gets Amy out of that barn. And then obviously Tristan cannot drive on the road. So then he goes around to the passenger side, and Todd puts Amy in the vehicle, into the truck basically on Tristan's lap. A lot of people go crazy about that too. Why would he put that on his mother on his son's lap? Well, it's a truck. You want to put Amy in the bed of the truck? He's putting Amy in the front, and that's basically the place that exists, the front of the truck. So the front seat. So that again is nothing unusual. He's driving now. He takes off toward the hospital. Why does he do this? Let me tell you, when you live in a location that is not easy for emergency vehicles to get to, they get lost sometimes. They can't find your driveway. They can't find where you are in that farm. They've got if you call 911 from the farm, they've got to get to the farm. Then they got to go around the farm trying to find the red building. By the time that all happens, she's going to be dead. So the more sensible thing is to throw her in the truck and get on this road straight to the hospital. And then once he was on the road, Todd did call 911 and say, look, we're on the way to the hospital. My wife fell on a corn rake. We're on our way. They told him to pull over and do CPR. He followed their instructions. He's on 911 doing CPR. And he seems pretty bent out of shape. Seems like he's trying very hard to do CPR. And let me tell you, most of the time CPR fails. I think it's successful. What is it, 7% of the time? It's not as good as you all think. So if you ever have to give somebody CPR and they die, not your fault. It doesn't really work that well. So we don't know how long she was bleeding out in the barn. Okay, we don't know when she either fell on that corn rake or was stabbed with a corn rake, but she probably was fairly dead when she was already in the truck. The CPR wasn't going to help. She was pronounced dead at the hospital. And I don't know how, I could not find a time of death listed. And that pissed me off because I can't find an autopsy report. This is a piece of information I really want to know. Like how much rigor had set in. What was going on here? In other words, had she been dead 10 minutes? Has she been dead 30 minutes? Has she been dead an hour? It makes a huge difference in the case. I mean, if she was still like bleeding out, but somewhat alive when they brought her into the truck, that's real different than she's already been dead an hour. Of course, as I point out, since how long does it take to get a pet carrier out of that red shed? If she went to that red shed and went to get that carrier, it would take 5 minutes for her to get it out of there, and she never did. So I'm going to say she was dead at least an hour and a half, or she was bleeding out for the entire hour and a half by the time her body was removed from that location. So the CPR probably wasn't going to do any good. All right. But I find nothing wrong with Todd asking his wife to help out on the farm 4 days after an ablation. I don't think that was a big deal. He wasn't asking her to do heavy labor. 2, he instructed supposedly that she just go back to the house, but could she get the pet carrier? Is that unreasonable? No. Even though he could have just asked his son to get it. But I'll get to that later. 3, was it unreasonable they took his wife, removed the rake out of his wife's back to take her out of the shed? No. Was it unreasonable he didn't call 911 right there and wait for them? No. That he put her in the truck to get her at least out of the farm and on the way where any ambulance could find them sooner? Absolutely not. I think he did everything correctly. So you all just don't live out in rural areas and understand these things. But I think from the time he went into the shed and removed her body and put her in the truck, all of that was fine. Nothing wrong with it. He did everything the 911 people instructed him to do. I find no wrong there. Now, I want to point out something there, and then I'll check with some of your questions and comments before I go on to more about what I think happened. All right. This is the most egregious thing that was done by the prosecution. Just wrong beyond belief. All right, let me show you what. So he's doing CPR. The prosecution is in court, and they have Todd listening to the 911 call and This is what they claim. This is what the prosecution claims. And I think this is egregious and just appalling that this was even allowed in court. Here's the first thing they said. Oh, so Todd, while you were doing the chest compressions and trying to give her CPR, we heard you mutter under your breath, cheating whore. And they play this tape. And I'm going to link the tape below in the description because it's on YouTube. And it shows, you can listen to it and you can say, did he say cheating whore? In other words, 1, 2, 3, cheating whore. 1, 2, 3, cheating whore. Or did he just say 1, 2, 3 more? 1, 2, 3 more, whatever. He listens, he goes, I didn't say that. Then she doubles down, that prosecutor. She says, you not only said that, you said under your breath on 911 tape, go to hell, cheating whore. Didn't you say that? And he's listening going, no. Now, I want you to also, I'm going to link this also. It's on Twitter, and it's a better one on Twitter because it does, on Twitter, they do this sound thing, just repetitive. It goes real quick. And so you can just do it over and over yourself, and you can see how true this is. But I can't put Twitter up here, so I'm going to link it to YouTube. And it's called Brainstorm versus Green Needle, and the person cannot spell apparently because they put brainstorm, but all right. No, they just mistyped and never fixed it. But I'll link this too. This is something called Brainstorm versus Green Needle. What they do is they play a strip, a sound, an audio thing, and it goes, brr, brr, brr. And if you are thinking brainstorm in your head, you will hear brainstorm, brainstorm. If you look at a thing that says green needle and you put green needle in your mind, you'll hear a green needle. It's the freakiest thing ever. The one on Twitter says, if you look at brainstorm, you'll hear brainstorm. If you look at green needle, you'll hear green needle. But you don't even have to look at it. All you have to do is close your eyes and think to yourself, brainstorm, and you'll hear brainstorm. Or close your eyes and think green needle, and you'll hear green needle. As a matter of fact, you can close your eyes and say brain needle, and you'll hear brain needle. Or you can close your eyes and say green storm, and you'll hear green storm. Freaky as all get out. And there's some scientific explanation for this. But it is a fact that is what you will hear. And you listen to it, and it's amazing. You're like, how in the heck is this? How the heck can I hear 4 different things? The minute I think about it, I hear it clear as day. But you can. And the prosecution knows that. And yet they go in there and tell the jury that he said cheating whore. And he said, go to hell, cheating whore, during the 911 call. And that to me is egregious because, first of all, it's a lie. There is no proof he said those things. And he'd be a massive idiot to say those things in the middle when he's on 911 anyway. It's being recorded. At that point, he's trying to theoretically save his wife's life, or at least pretending to save his wife's life, whichever way you want to look at it. But he sure is not probably going to say at that point in time, go to hell, cheating whore. But because they introduced that to the jury, and I'm going to guess some of those 12 people heard that then, because that's what she put in their heads. And what kind of man, supposedly trying to save his wife's life, would say, go to hell, cheating whore? Well, obviously a murderer. Obviously a guilty man would say that, right? So that, I think, was one of the most egregious things they did. So what the prosecution did so far, which I find pretty abhorrent, is they made it sound like everything he did was something nobody would do. The supposed searches, some of the searches, which are, obviously little anger searches, are something no man would do unless he wanted to kill his wife, which is ridiculous. Secondly, that he was cruel to his wife to make her do any work. Third, that he took the corn rake out of her back, and that was a bad thing. And he didn't call 911 right away or try to save her life right there. Instead, he put her in the truck and drove off before he called 911. That is wrong. And then while he was doing the CPR, he was saying, go to hell, go to hell. What was it again? Go to hell, cheating whore. Go to hell, cheating whore. All of these things they put into the minds of the jury to make him out to be a horrible husband, a husband with a lot of anger toward his wife, and that he hated her, that he would do this kind of thing because of all these behaviors, when a lot of these behaviors were not abnormal or unreasonable. That bothered me. As far as the main motive that they put out there, which was he would lose half the farm or maybe the whole farm because the whole family would break up and she'd get a bunch of stuff. I don't know how much he'd lose. They had quite a bit of stuff. I don't know whether he would retain a reasonable portion of it or not, and with a good lawyer, because she was the one cheating on him. She was the one that wants to leave. She's cheating on him. I don't know how that would work out. Whether he couldn't conceive that he could retain enough of his, at least his farm, to make it, worth not killing her. I don't know. Now, in my opinion, she was that unhappy. One of the things she could have done would be go to a lawyer and draw up a reasonable divorce thing that simply said to him, look, you can have the farm. I don't want to take that away from you. You've worked too hard. It was yours before I even married you. I'm not going to take that away from you. Well, how about this? These are the reasonable conditions I would like to get divorced under. You can do that. You can do that with a divorce. You don't have to go to court and fight it out. I did that with my divorce. Was done between two lawyers very quickly. And I'm not going to get into my personal business on that, but it was not worth going to court and fighting over a lot of stuff. Some things were just left. It was just better to let it go. So could she have just done that? So you keep the farm, dear. You keep the farm. It's yours. I'm going to go back to work at the hospital because, hey, I'm a competent nurse. I'll make a whole lot of money, So she could have done that, which would have been wise. Apparently she did not do that. So that did put him in a situation where theoretically he could have reasonable motive to prefer her to die by corn rake in an accident, where then he would retain everything, then take the chance in court. So does Todd Mullis have a motive? Yes, he does. So he has a motive, but could it have been an accident regardless of the fact he had a motive? And for a lot of these things, I say it didn't prove he was doing all these wrong things that day. Doesn't prove that those things don't prove it wasn't an accident. It doesn't prove somebody else couldn't have done it. So I'm going to go check with your comments, and I want to talk about the defense. I'm going to talk about the wounds, and would this be, if she was murdered, was it premeditated or not premeditated? What are the chances it really could be an accident, that he is now being railroaded and it was an unsafe conviction? So I'll get to all of that. Let me check on your comments though. Oh Lord. Let's see. I don't know. Okay. We have opinions here. Benny says, yes, he's guilty. Okay, that's Benny's opinion. So it'll be interesting to get your thoughts on this as I go through it. Let's see. Let me roll down here. Sorry, I'm sweating now. Okay. Okay, Rachel says, I had an acquaintance who was impaled on farming equipment. It does happen. It can be very gruesome. And this is true, that a lot of farming equipment has a lot of things that are really, a lot of prongs, things that stick out and do terrible things to you. Fence posts are not so good. Pitchforks are around. There's a lot of stuff with just these. Yeah. And farming is a physical activity. You're connecting with the machinery. You're connecting with metal. You're connecting with equipment of all sorts. It can be very dangerous. Let's see. What? Chuckling at that image of Pat in a helmet feeding her minis on a mini farm. And a helmet? I have no idea what you're talking about because I've never worn a helmet in my life. Is that a joke picture? I don't know. Oh, wait a minute. Michaela says, I fall on a pit. Oh, come on. I fall on a pitchfork all the time and impale myself. Let's see. Okay, let's see what Waltzing Matilda has to say. I lived in rural Australia for 10 years, dairy cow country. Heard about farm accidents all the time. Some of the townspeople had fingers and limbs missing. There were occasional deaths. Yes. And my father-in-law, he almost died. Let me try to think. What was he on? He was on a tractor of some sort, and it was on a hill. And it tilted or something. He went underneath it. Something happened. I can't remember what the heck happened. Or was he trying to save somebody from getting near it? I don't know. But he ended up rolling over his leg. He walks with a limp these days, but he's still out there doing all the work. So he survived it, but it was a close call. Oh, that's a nasty one. Some poor guy, equipment rolled back onto him and impaled him. He's only in his 50s, been farming all his life. All it takes is that one moment for things to happen. There's a good point. As long as money is involved in the court system, I'm not sure we have a fair justice system. I have a problem with the levels of quality of lawyers, which is always problematic. Let's see. And that's true of medical stuff too. I mean, you can hire a great surgeon. You can get the guy that got his degree yesterday. That kind of sucks. Let's see. Sounds like he wanted control, thought he could regain control. Well, that was his farm. It was his life. It was his family. Would he want control? Yes. What was he feeling like his wife was trying to destroy his life? Yes. Was he legitimately correct about that? Yes. The problem comes down to with some of these things is when you come down to motive is just because you have motive, which is perfectly reasonable, doesn't mean you committed the crime. You see what I'm saying? So let's say, somebody finds out the spouse is cheating on them. Should they be angry? Yes. Could they scream and yell and say, I wish you were dead? They could say that. Does it mean they made them dead? It's two different things. So sometimes we take perfectly reasonable behavior under the circumstances and automatically say that's proof of them committing a particular crime. And it's not proof. Does it allow for a motive? Sure, it does. Let's see. This one. This was totally stupid in my opinion. I'm sorry. One of his internet searches. Once you hunt man, you will always feel a thrill of the kill. First of all, I thought it was just once you hunt. I didn't know it was hunt man. But anyway, again, this had nothing to do with the wife. This does not prove he's a killer. He was a hunter. So he's a hunter. Goodness gracious. And as far as this goes, let's see. What happens to cheaters in history? Killing unfaithful women. Organs in the body. Organs in the body. The guy works on a farm. He knows what organs of all the body parts are. I'm pretty sure he knows where the basic body parts are. I don't think that means anything. And these were all done at different times. Killing unfaithful women, that was about, I think, the Aztecs. What happens to cheaters in history? Hey, was he angry? Yes. Was he frustrated about the fact that he felt impotent? I say not impotent sexually, but impotent to do anything about the situation that allows somebody to do this to him. I don't know if any of you have ever been on the side of being the one cheated on. From all the stories, I've heard that person feels impotent because they have set up for themselves this life. They've worked hard to have this life. Maybe they had a happy romance and then they had a happy honeymoon and then they bought their home together and it's decorated, the children come along and then one of those suckers starts cheating. And the spouse is going to lose everything they built, and it's not their fault. They thought they had everything okay, and now suddenly they're going to lose their home. A lot of times when people get divorced, they don't get to keep the home. So the home that they love, lose it. They're made out of some shabby apartment someplace. Then there's the fight over the children, and then there's even if you get to keep the children, the other person is pissed off because they don't get to visit the children enough, or that they have to pay too much money to take care of the children that they have no control over, or the children go back and forth between houses and that's a wreck. And then there's boyfriends and girlfriends that come in and then you have to worry about creepy boyfriends around your daughters over here. And you got to horrible. It's a mess. If you don't think cheating screws up people's lives, 100% it does. And the faithful spouse has a right to be pissed and to think that this person is destroying their life. Now, mind you, the faithful spouse can sometimes be the reason the person wanted out. That's what she's claiming. The claim is that Todd is not a good husband to her, and whatever. He works too much. He's controlling. Blah blah blah. We don't know the truth of any of this. We don't know. Every side has its claims. Okay, she made claims to her friends. Doesn't mean it's true. No. If he made claims to his friends, doesn't mean it's true. No. So we actually don't know the dynamics of the relationship. But regardless, when somebody cheats in the relationship and cheats again and their divorce is going to happen, somebody's going to feel like they've been stabbed in the back. So maybe I'll stab you in the back. Could be a thought. Could be a thought. But just because you look it up on the internet, what happens to cheaters in history, doesn't mean that means you're going to kill anybody. You may just be thinking, well, in this day and age, what happens with cheaters these days? They say, oh, it's all fair. You just go to court, and nothing happens. Once upon a time, in my mother's day, if my father had cheated on her, and he never did. Wonderful guy. Anyway, married 50 years. If she had gotten a PI to go and take pictures and prove that he was cheating on her, she would have gotten alimony the rest of her life. These days, well, alimony's pretty much gone. But the court system is it's a crapshoot as far as who gets what, and some of it's just vicious and nasty. And so sometimes the person who does cheat gets to walk away with lots of stuff, and the person who's cheated on gets screwed. So that person might sit down and go, oh, what happened in history? Oh yeah, once upon a time that would happen. They'd be get a what is the adultery thing on your head, scarlet letter thing, whatever. Old days, maybe you would have been run out of town, or maybe you would have been crucified. I don't know. But that you would look that up doesn't mean you're going to kill somebody. So we just say you have to take that was all happening during the summer. These weren't recent searches. These were after he's thinking she's cheating on him again. Does that mean that day he decided to kill her? So I'm going to get into the premeditated issue in a minute. Let's see. Nini says, a lot of searches were taken out of context, like the one about how to treat open chest wounds was done by his daughter for a hunting safety class. At least it was claimed. Whether it's true or not, again, I don't have enough way to prove these things are true, but why would you look that up specifically? Well, how would that affect committing a homicide? And so one of the interesting things about, I'll get to that in a minute. I want to do about the premeditated thing in a minute. Okay, here we go. Tons of searches in the same time frame, like how to survive in the wild with no food, how to treat a gun wound. Yeah. So that's the problem. When you look at my search engine, you are not even going to want to be my friend. It's pretty creepy, but that's for my work. But sometimes people sit there and put in all kinds of crazy shit. Doesn't mean they're planning to commit a crime, unless the things are very specific. Then it's more concerning. Let's see. That's a good point. My mom grew up on a dairy farm with chickens and some cows. It was a lot of work. That it is. Farm work is brutal, says Rachel. All hours of the day and night, and mistakes can happen because of fatigue. Yep. So, all right, I've got so many more comments, but I want to go to the next part of this. So we have at this point, his wife is clearly dies or almost dies in that little red shed. So let's go there, and I want to talk about the corn rake as a murder implement. Okay, because I think this is very important. So again, here they are here. This is the red shed. This is the family home. So supposedly, Todd says, why don't you go get that animal, carry her out of here and leave it on wherever, like leave it here on the porch or whatever he's thinking should be left. He says that. She goes here. Hour and a half passes before she's supposedly found. All right. Now let's talk about premeditated murder and the corn rake. I'm going to say, if you're on a farm and you're going to premeditatedly plan the homicide of your wife, this is not what you're going to pick, for God's sakes. Because for this to come across as an accident, she literally does have to fall on the corn rake. She has to get in a location where she can fall on the corn rake and not make it look like you hit her with the corn rake. You've got to hit her in such a way that is going to look exactly like she fell on a corn rake. Really? I'm going to say on a farm, my God, have you got a lot of other choices here. She could accidentally get run over by a tractor. She could fall and hit her head on something. She could get stuck in a hog pen and get eaten. She could, oh my God, I think anybody who does hunting and has a farm and wants to murder their wife has 10 to 20 better ways than I'm going to plan that she looks like she fell on a corn rake. That is the worst premeditated homicide I've ever heard of. Just makes zero sense. So right now, I'm going to take premeditated homicide off the table. As a profiler, I can't see this. And the whole thing has to be set up in such a bizarre way. So on that particular day, he's got to say, okay, I got to get her into that red shed. I got to get her into the red shed, and I've got to attack her in such a way that it won't look like I killed her with a corn rake. So I'm going to ask her to go get this pet carrier in the shed, you see. And then I'm going to go there before she can get out of the shed with the pet carrier, which would take all of 1 minute, mind you. So we go back in here. Let's go back inside the thing here. Okay. She's going to walk in this place, pick up the thing, and walk out of the place. And in that small period of time, he has got to get from here to there before she gets out. Now, this is where the time frame makes no sense to me. Literally, it's not like there's a whole big thing there about how Tristan, when they ask him, originally when they questioned him, it was like, I was with my father the entire time, the whole couple hours, and he never left my sight. Then he changed it to say, no, okay, I went out maybe one time to get some water. Maybe I was gone for like 1 minute and 40 seconds. I think the 40 seconds is kind of weird. I would say a couple of minutes myself, but all right. He goes outside for a hose and then goes back in. Well, none of that makes any difference at all, because the minute the father supposedly asked his wife to go get the pet carrier was the only time that she could have been killed. He would have to literally say, she goes over there, and he would have to say, go get a drink of water now, Tristan. And he'd run over there right away before she could get out. Because once she's out, he can't kill her inside with a corn rake. He literally has to be right behind her. She goes to the shed. He's right behind her. He goes in the shed with her and hacks at her with a corn rake and then runs out. And then goes back to work and pretends everything's fine until he decides an hour and a half later, go get the pet carrier. I don't see it out there. And Tristan goes and finds his mother on her hands and knees with a corn rake in her back. So there's the problem. It makes no sense that they continued working. She went here and they continued working in the barn. And it wasn't until later, some point later, that Tristan might have gotten some water or whatever. And then Dad ran over there and killed her because she wouldn't have been there. I don't understand why this is not a big deal. She wouldn't have been there because she wouldn't be there more than a minute to get out a pet carrier. And now, if she were doing something else, let's say he sent her to another barn to do some cleaning work, and she was going to be there for 2 hours, well, then there'll be a lot of opportunity to go in and kill her. But there was literally 1 minute in that red shed for her to go in, grab that pet carrier, and walk out. It's not like it's highly hidden in there. The door, it's not far away from the door. So if she was sent to get the carrier, the person who, either two things happen. Okay. If she was murdered, that person was right there with her when she went to get the carrier. If she wasn't murdered, then it didn't matter. She could have gone there and nobody was paying attention. She fell on the rake and slowly died. And they went on working because they didn't suspect anything. And then at that point, he said, hey, Tristan, I don't see that thing out there. Why don't you go find out where that thing is, where your mother's at? Tristan goes over to the shed and says, oh my God, Mom's in the shed. Dad. Okay. All right. So now we have a bit of a different scenario. Either they sent the mom went out to get this pet carrier and indeed, because she was dizzy, fell on the corn rake. Nobody noticed because nobody was out there with her. They were busy doing their work. Or somebody went with her or right behind her when she went into the shed. They went with her or right behind her when she went into that red shed and immediately attacked her. Well, at least immediately, I say that within 5 or 10 minutes. Or somebody could have been hiding in that shed. Okay, let's not get rid of that one. If she was murdered, somebody could have been hiding in the shed. Perhaps somebody who was, I see this with Lassie all the time, showing up with my granddaughter. Lassie always finds these escaped prisoners hiding in red sheds, So maybe she went into the red shed and there was somebody in there already, and that person attacked and killed her. Okay, that's possible. Was this a premeditated homicide in any way? No. So I'm going to take that, again, completely off the table. Either, I'm going to go to 3 things now. Either she went out to this shed, got dizzy, and fell on the corn rake. And back at the hog barns, they were busy and didn't know anything had gone wrong until they found her body. That would be accidental death. Second one, premeditated homicide. Makes 0 sense. This is not the way you plan a premeditated homicide. Couldn't go down that way. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Get rid of that one. The third one, this one is, actually it's 4. This one is somebody's hiding in there, somebody unsuspecting. Now, some people say that's her boyfriend that she was cheating with. There's really no evidence he was even here. And there's his phone pinged elsewhere, although somebody said, well, they could have left the phone, so it would ping elsewhere. I don't think he's going to come to the farm. First of all, he has no idea where she is. The last text to him said she was in the hog barns, but he's going to come here and somehow be hiding in this red shed. And lo and behold, she shows up at the red shed to get a pet carrier. What a coincidence. No, that's not happening. It's ridiculous. So that is not the way he would kill off his love interest, and because she might wreck his marriage. That's not the way to do it. It's just ridiculous. So the boyfriend didn't come to the farm. So the only other person that could be there would be some vagabond, some escaped prisoner who happened to be hiding in the shed. Okay. So wait a minute. We got falling on going there and having an accidental death, falling on that. No premeditated homicide. So let me go to 3 then. Falling on the rake accidentally. Somebody hiding in the shed, she surprises them. Or somebody goes to the red shed with her, and something happens in that red shed. And that would be a crime of passion, as they call it. Some kind of argument broke out, and the person became very angry, hit her, picked up a corn rake, and attacked her until she collapsed. Those are the 3. All right. What are the chances of somebody hiding in there? It's not real good. Chances aren't good. So unless there's no, first of all, of course the cameras aren't working. That's one of the reasons the police are suspicious that Todd had committed this as a crime, because the cameras are not functioning on the farm, haven't been functioning for a while, or what they think he might have done was simply erase those days. And he claims that the cats played on the areas where the cameras were and knocked them down. And so his excuse seemed kind of lame. So they think he might have erased anything that would show what happened outside of this barn, who went into it and all that. All right. But let's take, okay. So if we either have a guy hiding in there and she just ran into this guy, or somebody, which would only be the other 2 people that were there, which is Todd and Tristan. One of them went with her to the red shed, got in an argument, got angry, and killed her. And the third one is she fell on the rake, as Todd believes she did. And those are the possibilities. All right. So now we got the problem of this. Is it murder or is it an accident? The defense attorney, oddly, took the accident off the table. He immediately said this was a murder, a brutal, horrible murder, which for Todd wasn't a great thing. Because if his own defense attorney is going to say it's a murder, then it's either going to be Todd, Tristan, or the unknown guy hiding in there. And since no unknown guy ever was noted there, no other DNA was found there, some unknown guy, the boyfriend wasn't there, that only leaves two, Todd and Tristan. What kind of defense attorney do you have? But now you have to ask yourself, why did the defense attorney go with that it was murder as opposed to an accident? Why would he even do that? So I'm going to say this. The reason he did that was because he was convinced himself it was murder. He thought that the jury would not believe it was an accident, that the woman that came in here to her name is she is the forensic pathologist. Her name is Kelly Cruz. By the way, she was excellent. A lot of people on YouTube complain about her gravelly voice, but gee, stop doing that. Stop. Every time somebody gets up there to do something that is professional, you do not have to talk about their looks or their voice or their age. It's very annoying. But she went through the wounds on the body. And the question would be why? How could these wounds occur? Could they have occurred from falling on the corn rake? And let me point out, as I said before, I believe there's farm accidents. Totally have no problem with it. I do not think most of what Todd did was suspicious at all. So it came down to me. Is there evidence that the wounds show this was not an accident, but a murder? Is there evidence? Was the defense attorney just a total idiot trying to go with say, oh yeah, it's murder, just not Todd, when he should have gone with the accidental thing, because that's what Todd said it was, because Todd believed that, in theory, that when he found his wife lying there, dying in the red shed, if it did not come to his head that she was attacked by some guy hiding in there or of a boyfriend, and he really did think, well, she's lying there she has a corn rake in her back, she might have fallen on it. I can see why he would think it was an accident. Absolutely. So again, his statement that it was an accident is not suspicious to me at all, unless he knows it's not an accident. But if he didn't know, he would say it's an accident. And then why doesn't the defense attorney go with that? I mean, your client says it's an accident. Why doesn't the defense attorney say, hey, he didn't kill her, it was an accident, and get away from the whole murder thing? I think the problem was the forensic pathologist detailed the damage. And let me explain it to you so you can see whether you think it turned. Oh, I look at this. I just sit right. I got really nice blonde hair now. That's great. Okay, here we go. Let me talk about the different damage to her body. One of the biggest problems they had. Let's get away from the actual there are 6 holes in her body. Okay, 6 holes in her back. One of those holes more to her side, but there are 6 holes. And one of the complaints about this whole thing is that the rake only has 4 prongs. You would assume if somebody fell on a rake and the rake's like this and they go whack on it, you're going to get those 4 prongs across the back, like that. And you don't see that in this case. You see 6. And then some people say, well, it could have been 4 here and then 2 like this, right? Indeed. Exactly what I thought before I started analyzing this case. Problem is, that's not the way the holes are. Okay. So I'm going to get to that in a minute, but let me talk about the abrasions. I'm not going to show the pictures because I'm trying to stay with doing things that don't upset YouTube. There were injuries on Amy's face, hands, and knees. There was a small abrasion or scrape on the middle lip. There was a larger abrasion on the left side of the chin with contusion and bruising here. So here and here. Those were both blunt force injuries. And some people will say that's because she fell on her face someplace. When she passed out, she collapsed in something, and something hit her. Possible. But there was no evidence of any wood, any gravel, any these things there. There was an abrasion on top and other parts of her ear and contusions behind her ear. They believe that something hit her ear relatively hard, and the earrings in here then caused contusions behind her ear. Her right hand has contusions on the back. Actually, both hands have bruising here. What looks like, because in an accidental death here, I'm looking at her going, okay, I'm coming in to get the pet carrier, and I get dizzy and I fall backwards. You could say her hands hit the ground, maybe. But what it looks more like, because of the way the bruises are, is that she's doing a defense thing like this against something coming at her. Contusions on her knees. And there's some pretty big contusions on her knees, like she fell to her knees, pushed to her knees, whatever. Again, she could have just naturally fallen, but it's a little bit much in too many places that don't look so accidental. All right, now let's go to the wounds, the puncture wounds, and this is where the problem comes down. All right, I have to show you these wounds, because if I don't, I can't even explain anything. But I have made them black and white so that they're not so, scary photograph. That hopefully this is acceptable on YouTube. All right, so this is the prongs we have here. She has 6 wounds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you see this one here. That's 5, and that's 6. All right. The forensic pathologist said she was struck at least twice, if not 3 times. I believe she was stabbed. I think it was 4 times. That's my opinion, 4 times. And therefore, accidentally hitting that rake the way she would have to hit that rake 4 times is pretty much impossible. Okay, I'm going to try to explain this to you. And I don't have a corn rake available. And this is a high budget show, so I did want to make sure that I explain things in a way using as the finest of equipment that I can to explain how this works. So I have this fork. I have this piece of bread. This is going to be her back. This is going to be a corn rake. That's pretty pitiful. I agree. But I'm hoping at least I can try to explain to you how this would have gone down. All right. So these two here are not, they're fairly deep, but they go up. What do I mean by go up? What do you call those things? Prongs? I don't know what you call those things. Anyway, one of the problems is things very curved. So if a person picks up a corn rake in a normal fashion, the prongs will be going up. If they're going after the person's back is here. If they went and stabbed at them, now mind you, one of the problems I have is these are very close together. These are very far apart. So I'm trying my best with this little piece of bread to show you what would have happened. Look at these 2 prongs here. These 2. These other 2 are not going to be, see how these go together? I'm going to put this closer. If I hit here like that, what you're going to get is these 2 marks. That's where the prongs are going to go into her. The other 2 are not going to go into her body at all, or they're going to miss the body. But if you're coming out, if the person is running and you go like this and stab them in the back like this, that could be what happened the first time. After the person is stabbed in the back, the chances of them falling to their knees is not unlikely. All right. Now, if you're going to go essentially for the kill shot, you're going to flip that sucker over because you're coming down with that. All right. The rest of these, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all downward. It's a little hard for me to show you this because we're talking about her body position can change too, which completely screws things up. And when they say downward, and they're talking about from the autopsy, they're talking about the front of the body downward. Okay. Not the first 2 are upward, other 4 are downward, but if her body is moving, that can change what it appears to be. I tried to do a full explanation here, but it's really impossible under these circumstances without actually having an entire, I could use a model of some sort to prove these things. But I just want you to get a basic idea. So now what you have is a person who is most likely collapsing to the knees toward the door because her head was facing the door. These 2 marks, although they look very very much in a row. They look too close together to me. When I'm looking at, it's really hard to tell here, but the theory here is that this is for one, these two are done together. If those two are done together, that's how far apart the tongues are. But I mean, those, I don't know what you call them. What do you call them? Somebody tell me what you call those things. It's hard to know. So here, from here to here, these would either have to be one stab, or this would have to be two different stabs. I think it's one. I think it's two of them. I think these two are not connected. I think what happened there is this. If you have a person leaning over, let's see if I can do this. If you have a person leaning over, and they're leaning down. Actually, they're like ducking, right? Probably with their hands over their head. Okay, well, I'm putting a sweater on for this because I don't want to show my arms. Okay, but this is important. Okay, so I'm going to put my sweater on. Such an expensive production. Hey, if I had 6 million viewers, 6 million subscribers, and a great team, I would have had a pitchfork here, and I'd have a model. But I don't have that. So anyway, here we go. This person is here. All right, you've already come at them. If they're trying to run out the door, you go at them and you hit them with these 2 times. They go over. Okay. Now that they're over, and you flip this around so you can do this. If they're going over and you're sort of stabbing at them, this would only have one of them go in. If you did it a couple times, you'd have that same one go in, just boom, 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 boom. All right, 1, 2. Then if you go for the kill shot, essentially that person is going like this at this point, you always try to protect your head, even though that may be not what you need to protect. But you go like this. She was then therefore not straight like this, but probably slightly bent over like this, which is why one of these goes straight into her back and the other one goes underneath her arm, because she's like this. So to do that, the first and second, I could say time because this is not a corn rake. Let me put it up closer. The first and second would go into her, the one going into her back and the one going into her side. The other 2 would not be going into her at all. So that would be, I can't say, I'm going to try to show you this. It's a horrible way to try to show you anything. But you see, one goes, and I can't do it because these aren't wide enough. But one would go into her back, one would go into her side, and the other 2 would not go in at all. All right, very bad description with a fork, but it's the best I can do. So that would be how you would have one hit, 2, 3, and this is 4. So stab, she falls down, stab, and then stab. That's 4. Okay, now I got to take this off. I'm sweating. To me, 4. To go along with the different angles. And I say it's poorly explained. I apologize. There's just no way I can do it any better on a YouTube show that has a limited budget. But just want you to get the idea. There's no way with those 4 stabs that I believe she could have fallen on that object. Okay, even if her body came onto just 2 of them, for her to get up and hit them all these different ways, different angles, 4 times, it cannot happen. All right, and the type of abrasions to her face, to her mouth, to her cheek, to the back of her hands, to her knees, no, that's not an accidental death. And I think that's what the defense knew, that they couldn't make this very accidental. So if it's not an accidental death, now we have to say who did it. All right. Let me take those pictures off and put something. Let's go back to here. All right. Not a premeditated murder. Not an accidental death. Where does that leave us? At least to me, leaves us with a crime of passion. When did this crime of passion occur? Well, it occurred as soon as she went into that red barn, which means somebody went into the red barn with her. because it's unlikely that the person that she walked in there, they just said, I'm going to go kill her now. Something happened in that red barn. Some discussion, something happened to cause this to blow up at that point. So that person picked up that corn rake and became enraged and started hitting her. Now, do I guess it has to do with her infidelity? Yes, it does. Most likely. I can't imagine anything else that would cause that kind of rage in that kind of time, unless you're going to go with the fact some stranger was hiding in there and killed her, and Todd and Tristan had no idea somebody had hidden in the barn, and she just walked in on them, freaked them out, and they attacked her. That is the only other explanation. But here's where the problem comes down to, as far as if I weren't doing interrogations and interviews and all this stuff. Unless that were true, then there are two people that know what happened, Todd and Tristan. Two people who could have committed the crime, Todd or Tristan. Two people that would have covered up the crime, Todd and Tristan. Why would they cover up these things? Tristan was 13 years old. They seemed like he worked a lot with his dad. He was going to one day get the farm. He seemed to be a very hard worker. Would he protect his dad? I would think so. On the other hand, would the dad protect his oldest 13-year-old son? I think so too. And as long as everybody believed it was an accident, no one would go to prison. But who went in the red barn with the red shed with the mom, with Amy? So, because I don't believe this was premeditated, somebody would have gone with her for some other reason. I mean, just maybe get the pet carrier. The pet carrier was in there, and she was in there. So, I mean, the other possibility is that she fled into that location, went in there to hide. But somebody had to be with her, and something had to become an issue. And the corn rake was a weapon of opportunity because it was there. That probably somebody who was hit first. She was hit first. Then the thing was picked up, and that person in a rage stabbed at her. Then she fell, and they stabbed some more. Now, I'm bothered by two things. That it's not unreasonable that Todd would have sent his 13-year-old son to get that pet carrier, or to help his mom get the pet carrier. That would be a very reasonable thing for a dad to say, hey, go with your mom, get the pet carrier, and then, just Amy, just go back to the house and just bring the pet carrier back or whatever. And they go in there, and there's some argument that ensues, like, you're cheating on my dad. She gets texting or whatever she's doing with her boyfriend. He gets in an argument with her, cheating on my dad. You know what's going to happen? I'm not going to be able to work with my dad anymore. I'm going to lose the farm. We're not going to be here anymore. It's your fault. Dad was nice to you. He was trying to be nice to you. You're cheating on my dad. And you're going to ruin all of our lives. You're going to ruin my life. And he goes into a rage and he attacks her. And the one thing that bothers me is that the claim is that he went in and saw his mom on her hands and her knees and her hands, which I find pretty odd position to be in when you die. But it is a position she would have been in when the last stab came into her. She was going like this and trying to hide and got stabbed and then put her hands down and she was kneeling. That's something you would have seen and stuck in your head. She was on her hands and knees. Whether Todd actually found her that way is another question. Whether she collapsed on her knees, don't know. The checking of whether she's breathing, has a pulse, is that something he would have done if he found her? Or is it something he would have maybe done if he thought, oh my God, I just killed my mom? Then he runs out and says, Dad, I got an argument with Mom. And Dad runs in and says, okay, well, we'll just say she fell in a rake because he's trying to save his son's life. Or the alternative is Todd said, Tristan, take care of some stuff. He goes out, says, I'll help you get that. I'll walk with you. Gets into the red thing and then says, what do you do? I bet you still have an affair. Are you going to ruin my life? He gets in an argument with Amy and he stabs her. And then he comes back out and just goes back to the barn and then later says, hey, Todd, can you go check him? I don't see the thing out there. Can you go check and see because he wants his son to, I don't know why, he wants his son to find the body. and pretend he knew nothing? That's also possible. So I think there are two very possible scenarios. And I wasn't there to investigate or to interrogate or to get all the other details. I don't know what condition the hands were of either one of those. Oh, I want to point this out. Somebody said this, and I want to make this clear. Somebody said if it were a murder, there would be, because she was stabbed more than once, which have been three, my opinion, 4 times, there would be blood flicked off on the walls. No. Why not? Because she was wearing a shirt, she was wearing a sweatshirt, and she was wearing a winter coat. And when you stab somebody and you come back through all those layers of cloth, that cleans that enough so that it's not going to be flying everywhere. So no, that is not very meaningful as to why there's not blood all over the place, because of her clothing. So what we have, in my opinion, is either a complete stranger was hiding in the barn and just surprised Amy, or Todd killed her, or Tristan killed her. The chances of the stranger is very limited. So if I were working this case, I would be heavily interrogating the two of them to find out where the flaws in the story were. What bothers me is, again, Tristan saying that he went out to get some water. That's when he didn't see his dad. Well, where was he when he was getting the water? Did he walk out with his mom? I mean, I don't know. And an hour and a half passed after it happened. So what was going on for that hour and a half? Somebody knew, unless it was a complete stranger in that red shed, one of them or both of them knew she was lying on that floor. Was that hour and a half used to figure out what to say, what story we're going to tell, how we're going to do this? I have to admit, if you're going to say somebody fell on the corn rake, I mean, you would think they'd flip her body over. You know what I mean? To make it look like she was lying on top of the rake and not with the rake sticking out of her back. Now, mind you, she could have fallen and then flipped herself over trying to crawl to the door. This is true. But usually when you're staging a crime scene, you want to flip them over. Make it look the way you want it to look, you know? So I don't know. Do I think he got a fair trial? I think his defense attorney sucked. I think the prosecution was egregious in what they said and did to manipulate the jury. Do we know that he killed his wife? I say there is not sufficient evidence to say that Todd Mullis murdered Amy Mullis. I don't think the evidence is there because it could have been Tristan Mullis. And it could have been theoretically, although extremely unlikely, a person hiding in that location. So I pretty much feel like the jury found him guilty because of their contentious relationship, and that they thought he didn't behave properly after he found the body, which I don't think is true at all. I think everything from the moment he walked into the shed, I don't have any problem with anything he did from that point on. So the real question is, how did she end up getting stabbed in the shed? Who was there to do it? And whose stories should we believe? If she was killed by a complete stranger, because I do believe she's murdered, then the two of them would have to have the same story and have to be reasonable, and nothing is wrong with their stories at all. But if one is covering for the other, then we have an issue. But who would be covering for whom? And they did not bring anything like that out in the trial. So at least not that I know of. So what do you think? I mean, I think it's fascinating. Do you think it's an accident? Do you think a stranger was hiding in the shed? Do you think Todd did it? Do you think Tristan did it? Because that's what the evidence seems to point to me, that most likely one of them, Todd or Tristan, most likely committed the crime in a fit of anger. But can we prove either one of them did it? And then what happens if both of them covered it up? So let me take a look here. Sarah says, we can not judge people on how they perform or act over increasing amount of changing and stressful situations. Sometimes we can, but we can't always. And we have to be careful of being unreasonable about it, or looking at things solely from our point of view. Like, I live in a city, don't know what it's like to live in a farm. I wouldn't have done that. Well, because you don't live in a farm. You have no idea how things work. So, You have to, that's a so difficult part of these things, is having enough knowledge to be able to correctly assess anything. Let's see. This is correct. There are two different directions. There's the 2 up, 4 down. But again, it depends also how the body is moving, because a body can have, say, if you're looking at me straight on, this is why I couldn't really explain this terribly well. If you're looking at me straight on with my fork, and I get stabbed this way, then they're going up and back, okay? But depending on how my body is, those wounds can still be up and back, but that's not the way they were enacted. It's really hard to explain, but it just all depends on the movements of the body. You can get a good idea, but sometimes the body position will change exactly how the angle was when the person attacked with whatever weapon it was. And I say, at least, I think 4 times. I think that 2 of them, there's no evidence the lover was there, and there's no evidence the lover would know to go to the red shed. There was no communications between the lover and her that he would know she was going to be in that red shed for all of 5 minutes of her life. I mean, that's just unreasonable to think that, because she said she was cleaning lights in the hog barn. Therefore, he knew that she was with her husband. Do you think he's going to come over and try to murder her while she's working with her husband and not even contact her and just happen to find her in the red shed? Yeah, very unlikely. I did say that, but maybe this was before I said it. And this is correct. Now, some people think the bruising, Molly, could have been from her when she fell. Like if you're passing out, you might grab for something and slam your face into one of the shelves and then flip backwards. All kinds of things can happen when you're fainting. I mean, I've only fainted once in my life, but when I went down, I hit a sideboard. And when I woke up, I had this huge lump on my head because I hit the sideboard going down. It didn't bother me because I was unconscious at the time, but I had a big lump, So you can hit a whole bunch of crap on the way down. You're in a small area. Theoretically, she could have gotten a lot of that damage falling on things. But when you put it all together, the way where the bruises are on her face, on her hands, on her knees, and then the holes coming from different angles, that just I would do a whole reenactment of that in a courtroom situation. I take that corn rake over here and I stick it on the floor and I get a mannequin and or maybe I do a whole video, throw that mannequin on that rake, I don't know how many times, and see if I can come up with those holes or anything close. And the answer would be no. Or I could take that mannequin instead of a piece of bread and a fork, and I could take that and I could say, okay, now I'm coming at this way. And now I'm doing this. Now I'm doing the upper thing. And then they're leaning over and and I could come up with those. I think I can come up with those wounds by doing the at being attacked 4 times with the corn rake. That's what I think it was. Those 2 holes, then this poke twice, doom, 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 and then the last time. Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3. That's 4. Yeah, 4. Let's see. Well, you couldn't fall back twice on the rake and end up in, the position she would have been in my opinion, had she fallen a couple times on the rake enough to stab herself up, but not die. And then she got the final one, I believe, because we don't have exact information on how that when they said the rake was in her back, my belief is 2 of the prongs, not these 2. These 2 prongs are in her back and her side, because I said she was, I believe, on her side like this. So one was into her back, one was into her side, and the other 2 were just out there. But through her clothing and all that, you're going to still say there was a corn rake sticking out of her back, because it was just 2 of the prongs weren't in there. Just 2. The other 2 were in, but 2 were not. But still, it's sticking out of her back. Theoretically, if she had fallen somehow on her sort of half side, whatever, into that, she could then still dying but not dead, crawl onto her knees and try to crawl to the door to get help. That's possible. That's what makes some people think it's an accident, that she could then, that would be sticking out of her back and she'd be trying to get to the door. And then she collapsed before she got to the door. I don't have a problem so much with the final two, the ones that were, I believe was the back and the side, the deep ones that went through straight through her breast and her breast implant and into her lungs. And that's what killed her. I don't have a problem with her falling on her side, sort of on her side onto those two prongs and then trying to crawl to the door. I think that's even possible. The problem I have is the other 4 holes. I can't get them in her back in those, and the way they are, I have trouble with that. So unless somebody can show me how that would work, with a proper mannequin and with a corn rake and do a whole video, and we can find a way for her to fall in those ways and then be able to get herself off the rake and not fall on the rake 4 times. There's where I end up with a problem. So yeah, I can't quite make it work. Let's see. The whole camera thing is questionable. You have all these cameras around the farm. Theoretically, do you keep them running? Maybe you do. But again, here we have the issue of people in their daily lives and lots of animals. And I personally know we have cameras all around as well. And sometimes those cameras aren't working and you don't realize it for a while. And it could be because of stupid cats. They do knock things off. I don't know exactly how that all worked. I don't know whether they weren't working, in which case it has nothing to do with this, the crime at all, or whether they were literally everything was erased so that no one could see what happened. Obviously, the cameras were working and you could see someone following her into the barn, or you could see somebody in the night going to hide in the that red shed. Somebody in the night, you see a figure going there, hiding in the barn, red shed. You see her go in there by herself, and no one goes in there but her. Then you say, well, somebody got her when she was in there. Or if you see no one ever getting in there, and you say, well, it is an accident. It's the strangest accident in the entire world. I don't know how she fell on it 4 times, and now she got the other injuries, but okay, she's the only one that went in until she was found. So there's no way anybody did anything to her. But then again, it may be that the cameras weren't working and the person who went with her into the red shed got lucky because the cameras weren't working. Or they came home and erased the stuff they erased the videos so they wouldn't be seen going in with her into the red shed. And that's what we don't know. And that's why the police are extremely suspicious, because there was no video from that moment. And there should have been. So that's one more suspicious thing. You think the wound, they could have been explained by a fall, but the question is, I'd have to look in that shed to see exactly where she could have fallen, what kind of damage it would have done to her, done to her face, to her knees, to the back of her hands. The back of the hands bothers me the most, because those do look like defensive wounds from the handle. That's what it looks like. Something's hitting her hands. Could she have fallen and whacked her hands going down? Yeah. And this is where the totality of the evidence comes in again. You can look at all the bruising on her body and say, was this something she could have gotten in a fall or 2 falls? And from crawling, maybe trying to, after she collapsed, crawling toward the door. Could she have gotten these things? Possibly. And could those holes in her back have all happened with her collapsing onto the rake more than once as she struggled to get off of the rake and tried to get to her feet, and maybe even try to pull the rake out of her back and then collapse on it again? Is it possible? So you have to put all that together. And my problem is I don't have enough. I don't have enough information. I don't think the jury could have enough information to make those determinations unless I didn't see something. I didn't watch the whole trial. So I don't know what they did. I only could see what on, a few things on YouTube and on the 48 Hours show. I want to see a whole video of a mannequin with that. I want to see them inside the red shed. I want to see what movement we have inside the red shed. Some people are saying nobody could hit her hard enough to make these things go through because the shed was narrow. I personally disagree with that. I think there's enough room. I think there is. And then I would like to see how she would fall to the floor in there. I mean, I want to see a whole bunch of video here, a whole bunch of reenactments, real reenactments, not with toast and a fork. I want to see a whole bunch of reenactments so I could clearly understand it. But I don't know what they did in the courtroom. Yes, he did turn the camera back on the day after the incident when he found he was told it wasn't working. Now, if you were told your camera didn't work, would you turn it back on? Well, probably. Guilty or not guilty. I know Pat can't read all the comments. That is darn sure. Oh, you're trying to explain yourself. I'm not sure what you're explaining. You're right. I can't read them all. So what are you trying to explain? Let's see. Okay. Let me go down further. Let's see. Whoops. Stephanie. I think he said that he was supposed to. I think he said that she went to get the pet carrier. I believe the son did say that. So I would like to see all. I know there was video of the father being interrogated, but I don't know. The son testified in court. Didn't see his face. We heard his words. He sounded believable in all that he said. But just because it's very possible. I say if you have an hour to work with and you just come up with a very simple story. The original simple story was we were never out of each other's sight. That was the first simple story, which makes it the right thing to say, even if you did it. We're covering for each other, because if we were both back in the hog thing, my mom went off to get the carrier and we were doing our work, and it was only when we know she hadn't brought the carrier out that I went out there and checked on her and found her there. That's simple. It's a very simple, you don't have to say any more than that. That's it. Then eventually Tristan did say, okay, maybe I was out of sight a couple times. I'm not sure what the second one was. I went out to get some water. I was out for just a minute and a half or 2 minutes. Why did that change? Was it because it was totally unimportant to begin with? That, we were in a sight. I didn't think of 2 minutes getting a drink of water was considered out of my father's sight, because what's he going to do in 2 minutes anyway? He's not going to run through the barn and over to the red shed, kill somebody, and come back in 2 minutes while I'm drinking water. So that would be kind of stupid. And again, if it happened, if it wasn't an accident, she was murdered, and it wasn't a stranger, that person had to be with her when she went into the shed. I'm telling you, there's just no way in God's earth she went to the shed and half an hour later, Tristan went to get some water and Dad went racing over to the red shed. She wouldn't even been there. And even if Tristan went to get some water and decided he's going to confront his mother about her behavior, she wouldn't have been there. So the problem is the person had to be with her when she went into the shed. And so the story they tell is either a lie, that they sent her on her own and the two went on working. That's either a lie and one of them went with her, or if it was not a lie and it's true, she went by herself, that would be the only time you could say she was a freak accident or somebody else was in that barn and killed her, because then the two of them would have nothing to do with it. How would they kill her if she got killed right in the barn right away and within those minutes? If they weren't with her, somebody had to be with her, or she had to have a freak accident. So, let's see. Falling on the rake would not have the force, but maybe if you were pushed hard onto it and then pushed again and held by your shoulders, since the tines are stuck into you, that's possible. Possible. The problem I have is the positioning of those holes in her back. You know, usually you would expect if somebody were hit with it full force with the rake, and they just got her back, all four would just go straight into her. Maybe one would miss because, you know, her back might be not, you know, just doesn't hit quite. So it'd be three in a row and then three in a row. If she was pushed onto the rake, the same thing, they would be all in a row. There's not more than two in a row. So that's why the medical examiner said at least two times. Well, I don't know how she came up with just two times. It makes no sense. It has to be at least three times, in my opinion, because there are two times when it's very clear, two tines here, and usually I would assume that means the person's in movement enough to make it hard to do a better shot at them. Could she have fallen? I say, I have a real hard time making her fall in making her fall in the way to get those six. That's just somebody pushing her onto it. The pushing I like better than the falling, in the sense that I'm trying to imagine how I still have problems with those extra ones that are pokey ones. The ones that aren't so deep, that looks like to me somebody's poking and only poking like in such a fashion that only one of the tines is actually getting in there because the other ones just aren't quite, you know, you're not poking, you're on an angle. Let me put it that way. If you were going straight down, it would be like that. But if you're on an angle, you can have just one pokey thing go through. Now, this is the problem with ups and downs again. So if you had a person that's standing like this, let's see if I can do this now. You could not poke straight without more of them going in, okay? But if the person's leaning over, then you can poke like that, you see? Now, if they're leaning over, okay, let's go. I can't do it. There we go. I'm gonna poke you this way. Oh, it's very hard to do with hands. So this is their back, and you're poking. Instead of going straight into the back, you're going this way. Now you see how if I were going down like this, if you actually look, what way is that? If you put the hand straight back up, you would then have. I can't do it. It's impossible. Maybe the fork. Hold on. Okay. That's just it's almost impossible to do without the right equipment. But you can see that if you have a straight on, you're going to go straight in. If you have a body bent, you may only get a couple stabs like that. So that's why straight down, you're probably going to get more straight on, and not on. These are all on a slant. There are two up, four down, which means the body is moving in different directions, or the weapon is moving in different directions, or both. So it gets very complicated, and I would have to do an entire reenactment with a proper actual equipment to figure that out, and then videotape that, and then measure everything. So really, really tough. I think, as far as the force goes, I think if you fall back on this sucker, it'll go straight through your body. And then very sharp. You don't need a lot of force when you have sharp tines. That's why knives go through body like butter, because they're knives. You know, if you have a blunt object, it's not going to go through you very well. But you got sharp tines, they slice right into you. You a body falling on this, it'll go straight through. I have no question about that. Are these horrible questions? Not on a crime channel. It was 4 days. I don't think it would matter too much. And even if she was dizzy, the question really is, are the wounds consistent with somebody collapsing, being dizzy, falling, trying to recover? Is it consistent? And even, I say I don't like this defense attorney, but I'm wondering why defense attorney didn't even try to say it was an accidental death. Because it was, when he went to murder, I mean, he pretty much put the X on Todd and or Tristan. You know what I mean? Because unless you got the stranger hiding in the barn, if you say murder, your client's 50% chance of being guilty. So I don't understand the defense on this case. I really don't. That is a good question, and I don't know. I couldn't seem to find out whether it was hanging on a wall or was just lying on the ground. Don't know. I don't know. Or if it was stored in a certain way doesn't mean it was still there. Just because you store something on the wall doesn't mean it didn't end up on the ground. I did not see the entire trial. I cannot see the entire transcript of the trial. I don't have all the notes of the interrogations. So would I be asking that question? Yes. Where exactly was that corn rake on a normal occasion? Was it where it should have been? At times, was it left on the ground? Want to know. I would like to know all these things. Let's see. The timeline, only one can back it up is Tristan, his son. That's it. The only thing we know is that email to the lover. We know is 10 something. She was alive at that point. That's all we know. The rest of the time, that's between the two of them, and we have no proof because we have no video. So, don't know. Let's see. Why was it so important for her to go into the red shed? Well, one does wonder, doesn't one? She's not feeling well. Does she have to go get the stupid animal carrier? Can you just say, go, well, get the damn it. It's not that important. We can go. We're leaving the hog barn. We'll just go pick up the damn animal carrier and go put the kittens in it. Did she need to do that? Couldn't she just go to the house? Why did she go to the red shed? I think that's a great question, Sarah, and it bothers me. That's why I think it's suspicious that now, as I pointed out, it's a farm. People have to do a lot of stuff. Maybe stop trying to clean crap that's up on the ceiling. Could you just do us a favor and get that thing? Just do one useful thing before you go away. Could he have said that? Sure. Or did he not say that at all? Did Tristan go up with his mom to get the carrier, and she was just going to show him where the carrier was? Maybe he didn't know where it was. And she goes, why don't you go get the carrier? And they went there, and that was where that broke out. Or did Todd say, I'll walk you to the house? And Tristan carried on. He walked her to the house, and then he goes, let's go get that carrier. And they get in there, and they have an argument. I mean, the most natural thing to me, in my opinion, is that Tristan went with her. That I would send my 13-year-old kid to go with his mom and go with your mom and get that carrier. She'll show you where it is, and they bring the carrier back. That would be more natural, but natural isn't always true. Just that to me is more natural. She would know. She was all the holes came through her back, so she did not fall for it on the rake. Let's see. We need Lassie. Yeah, we do. Let's see. They could have used a dingo in this one. Yes, that would have helped. I mean, they could have done it while he's on the farm. He is a big guy. I'm pretty sure he could. She left the farm a lot, you know. She was sneaking off with a boyfriend, mind you. She was sneaking off into motels, side roads. If he wanted to knock her off, I don't think he would come to the farm in the middle of the day and try to find her in the red shed. That just makes no sense. Stephanie says, I just can't get past 6 wounds equal falling on it twice. Yeah, that I say again, if they were in the right order, I would believe it more. But they're not arranged correctly. That's the problem. You know, so it would be very hard to believe. Yeah. And there's a fight. Well, it looks like there was a fight. Let's say, and he grabbed the nearest sharp thing. This is why I call it, this is a weapon of opportunity. This is something this is, I say, if you're going to go with murder here, it's definitely not a premeditated homicide, because this corn rake is not really something you normally would choose to commit a homicide with. But yes, it is the nearest sharp thing. It's one of those things where if you saw it and you were angry, you could be hitting at somebody, whether you intended to kill them or you just started by hitting them and then you lost it. Good question. Let's see. If you had a defense attorney worth anything, he or she would have hired many experts to explore this fully. Yeah, I think that defense attorney was dreadful. And that's all I can say. It was a bad defense attorney. But the question is, can they prove that it could have been? They would have to literally prove it was accidental, that it could have happened accidentally. And I would say I'd get that mannequin out, and I would, maybe a whole bunch of mannequins, I'd stab up a whole bunch of mannequins with that. To try to find a way to prove she fell on that damn rake. I love crime scene reenactment. Usually I don't use a piece of toast and a fork. But especially on YouTube, I can't really come up here with a corn rake either, and a mannequin is not going to work out here. I say if I had that $6 million people, I would have rented a place. I would have found out the measurements, and then I'd have $1 million to work with, and I would have put together. I would love to do total crime scene reenactments. When I've done some television shows, I was supposed to do a show called Crime Rewind with Pat Brown. It was a Discovery Channel show. And we got that went almost all the way up to the executives. And for whatever reasons, they didn't greenlight it at that level, which is really sad because we did a whole really cool show, a sizzle reel. And I would have loved to have done that. And that's what I would have done, was a lot of crime scene reenactment in order to prove things, because angles matter. Do you have the angle? Do you have the height? Do you have the strength? Are there objects there that would cause certain types of damage? I would want to know all those things. And I would work with our prosecution or the defense to prove this was an accidental death. I'd work both, regardless what team I'm on. Why? Because if I'm going to say it's a homicide, I want to prove it could not be an accident. And all I saw so far, and maybe it's out there, and if you're in the comments, if you find that during the trial they did reenactments or showed videos of reenactments proving this couldn't have been an accident, I'd like to know. Or that it could be an accident, I'd like to know. Because all I saw was a forensic pathologist saying she believed it was she was hit 3 times and then it was a homicide. That's all I saw. And I saw the defense attorney saying, yep, it's a homicide, no question about it. He didn't even question it. So he went with this is a homicide. And unless you've got some other good suspect, you just stabbed your own client in the back with that corn rake. I mean, so should he get an appeal? Well, I don't know. If I were on that jury, I would have to say, and I rarely say this, I would have to say I have reasonable doubt that Todd Mullis killed his wife. Pat Brown almost never says that. But I cannot, from what I know, absolutely 100% say I do believe it's a homicide. I believe it, but I haven't proven it even to myself because I can't do the reenactments. 2, even if it's a homicide, I have no proof that Todd committed that homicide, that it couldn't have been Tristan who did it and he covered for him. I don't know. Now, maybe if I were on that jury, I would have seen way more in the courtroom to convince me, but I'm not convinced by the prosecution's crappy little 911 fake thing about she's a cheating whore. I'm not convinced that he did anything wrong by removing her body from the red shed and getting in the truck. I'm not convinced by anything the prosecution said, except for the forensic pathologist is the only convincing person in that whole trial, from where I'm sitting, because I didn't see the whole trial. And as far as the defense attorney goes, I don't know if he ever put on a defense that wasn't laughable. So from where I'm sitting, without seeing the entire trial, I, at this point, would say I have reasonable doubt, and you should get an appeal and a decent attorney, and I'd like to see a better prosecution. So I wouldn't mind a retrial on this one, which is very unusual for me. Okay, I think some of these are, I'm way back at 4 o'clock now. Okay. Stephanie says, to me, the abrasions are when she fell forward when she was whacked on the back with a corn rake. Supposedly, the forensic pathologist claimed that the abrasions did not have any dirt or anything embedded, as she believed would have happened had she fallen on her face on the ground. But I don't know what the ground was like. See, I don't have evidence of all this, the substrate and all that stuff around there to know why she would end up with what she ended up with. She believes she was hit, and she could well have been hit with the rake handle in the face. And that's why she put her hands up, and that's why she got those. The abrasions on her knees, I would assume, is from when she was probably when she fell to the ground, was maybe scraping herself on the ground with her knees. I do think it looks like she defended herself. And then at that point, she might have tried to run to the door, which is when she started getting stabbed up, because she couldn't, that stupid door, if you look again at that, she couldn't get out of the dang door because the door was frozen. This door is frozen in here. And she's trying to get through the dang thing, right? If she's running from somebody. And that's when I believe it may have been that when I said the stab up, it may have been that the person, they stabbed one time because he was holding the rake like this and then stabbed up. And then as she collapsed, he turned it over and started hacking at her. And she's got the coats in the way. So that's why I think sometimes one time went in, the couple times before he got the final hit would have been there. But that's if she was murdered. So, let's see. Is that raisin bread? No, I don't know what the heck. This is actually, I don't know what this is. It smells like garlic bread. Somebody dropped this at my house last night. That's why I have it here. Maybe dinner. Is Pat going to eat that bread? I don't know. It's been around a while now. It's been stabbed a lot, so I don't know. It was really a terrible back for my demonstration. I'm looking around. I couldn't find anything. I'm like, I'm screwed. It looks like a complicated way to kill someone when he could have just hit her over the head and fed her to the pigs. I say this is not a premeditated homicide. It's either an accident, if you can prove that to me, or it's a crime of passion or a crime of panic. Panic if you had some guy hiding in there and she came in and he's like, oh no, I've been discovered, which I'm having a real hard time with that one. So if you get rid of the unknown stranger hiding in the barn, in the red shed, which is a pretty crappy place to hide, mind you, then it was a crime of not so much, passion is a bad word for a crime of anger. A person who loses it at that point and becomes furious and attacks out of rage. It's a rage attack if it is a murder. And if it's not an accident, yes, I think it's one of those. And if one of them did go with her to the shed, both of them know what happened. Would both of them cover for each other? And I think the answer to that is yes. The problem here is that Amy wasn't a very good wife, nor was she a very good mother. Sorry, everybody, but I'm sorry. Things that she kept doing were destroying the family. And of course, maybe the family is going to be destroyed anyway because the marriage was failing. But there's better ways to end a marriage than what she was doing. And so either one of them, I think, would have protected the other because they both probably felt the same way, that she was destroying the family, ripping the family apart, and it was going to either destroy the farm or destroy them being together on the farm. I said, if I were in her shoes, if I thought he was the least bit controlling, I would have gone straight to the lawyer, and I would have made sure that since his son worked with him all the time, I'd probably have the older son stay with him on the farm. And I'd say, look, I'll take care of the younger two, and I'll bring the other, we can go back and forth on weekends with the three of them getting together. But you can have the farm, and I'll go get myself a cute little house with a backyard for the other kids, and I'll make sure it's nearby in the same school district, and I'll go to work at the hospital again. I can make great money. You don't have to pay for my life. You take care of the 13-year-old, I'll take care of the two. You can have the farm. That would have been the smart move. But people are greedy a lot of times, or don't think properly, or they have lawyers who want them to be greedy. God knows what she was thinking, And she was thinking the guy was going to break his marriage too. Now, he wasn't planning to. He was just getting some on the side. So, a lot of foolish behavior is what you got here. Let's see. I'm going down to the bottom now. I think it's suspicious that Todd sent the kid to find the mother. If that's what happened, then it was distancing action on Todd's part. But since we only have his word, who knows? Yes, that's true. So either if this was a homicide and Todd went with her to the red shed, then he killed her with Tristan being unaware. Maybe Tristan was busy, and later on when he went out and found her dead, maybe Todd could have easily said, look, you remember when I walked mom over there? In other words, Tristan would know he killed his mom. I mean, there's hardly, that she had an accident. Todd may have been able to play off the accident thing on Tristan. And then Tristan went ahead with what Todd said, that this was probably an accident. I walked your mom over there, and then I went and did something else, and she said I yelled, do you have the cat thing? And she goes, yeah, I have it. And I came back, and I guess she must have fallen at that point, made up some story. She fell on the rake, and maybe Tristan went along with it. And then when it came down to talking to the police, he said, look, if you can't tell them I walked your mom, they'll think I killed her. And Tristan's like, okay, I'll just say we were together all the time, right? Yeah, let's just go with that. We're together all the time. And vice versa. If Tristan went with her and he yelled immediately for his dad, then they would have put the story together. And if they were putting the story together though, and let's say Tristan was in there and Tristan came back and told dad what happened, why would the story be that Tristan found her as opposed to Todd finding her? I'm going to say it's because between the two of them, most people will say more likely that dad killed her than Tristan. So if you're going to come up with a more believable story, just in case I don't believe the fell on the accident story, maybe you just dad doesn't want to be in that shed with her because she's cheating on him. So the one you think is more likely to kill her is Todd. So then you have, I'm busy, I never left the barn, Tristan went out, and he's the one that found her. It's a better story. Now, could it really have happened that way? Only Todd would have had to go out with her right after. Todd would have had to walk Amy to that red shed, and Tristan would have had to known about it. And so could Todd then have just told Tristan, go out and check on, see what's going on? Because I left your mother in the shed. And she said, I left your mother at the shed. Because there had to be something that happened before. If one of those two killed Amy, there had to have been something that came before the attack with the corn rake. In my opinion, it had to be an argument prior to that. I mean, to get that rage bubbling up. So I wouldn't say 1 minute went by. I'd say 15, 20 minutes went by in that red shed of what's going on in there. Then argument, then the attack, then oh gosh, what do I do about the attack? And maybe checking for pulses or whatever, and then getting out. So somebody was gone. One of those two, if they were involved, was gone for at least 15 minutes. At least, if not 20 or 25. So the other person has to know that person probably did it. So yeah, I don't know what the police ever came up with the stories of those two. But it is a distancing action in the sense that, well, I didn't find her, so I was never in the red shed. In my opinion, Dad has the best motive, but for all we know, he spent the years since the first cheating incident convincing Tristan that his mom was a cheating whore, and therefore the son helped did it. Well, I don't think the son helped. One person probably committed the crime if it was a homicide, and the other one covered. But do I think that the boy might have been on his dad's side? Probably. Boys usually, well, some boys are like protect their mothers like crazy, but he already told his mother she shouldn't be cheating on Dad, so he knew about her affair or affairs, and that can't be impressive to a 13-year-old boy. His mother's cheating on his dad, so who knows how much rage that kid could have. Can't blame him, you know. It's not too thrilling. Am I an adrenaline junkie? Not really. Why do you think I'm an adrenaline junkie? Not really. Well, maybe when I used to work for the hospital. Yeah, I like to race around, go to the hospital, and work in the emergency room. But I'm not so good with like I wouldn't have been a good actual EMT or a police officer. I don't go on roller coasters and all that stuff. So, yeah, I'm more of a watcher than I am a doer there. Let's see. Tanya says, the argument started, it wasn't premeditated, but got out of control. And then the heat of the moment, his anger overwhelmed him, and that was that. That would appear to be the most rational scenario of whomever it was, you know, Todd or Tristan. I find it hard to believe I say a stranger was in there hiding. So either it was an accident, and the freakiest accident ever, or one of the two. No, I don't. The size, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that belief may have been that Todd was a stronger of the two. I don't know how tiny Tristan was at the time. He was 13. It could be a strong 13-year-old farm boy. It could have not been so strong. I don't know. We'd have to know. I would have to look at that and see strength-wise whether he would have had the strength. 13-year-old boys, oh my God, they can be strong as all get out. I can tell you that. They have, especially a boy who works on the farm. So I don't know that they would have been able to tell the difference. That's good. That's cool. People falling down. Well, they do sometimes. They do. I've fallen down as I fainted because I got cramp in my leg. I got such a severe cramp in my leg. All the blood went down there, and I just passed out. Only time in my life. And I woke up on my dining room floor with a big, huge lump in my head, and my water bottle was open and flowing all around me. And I was like, what the heck? So, but that was the only time I ever fainted. So, and I worked in the hospital, so a lot of blood and horrible sights, and I never fainted over that. But that cramp in my leg was severe. So, let's see, any other thoughts here? Oh, if Todd gets a new trial, perhaps the prosecution will be forced to hire pros for reenactment. I don't know. I don't know whether we have whether that red shed even exists anymore. Then we'd have to go by photos and pictures and try to figure that part out. We definitely get a similar the corn rake. We'd have get say a mannequin of sorts, and I don't know. I'd like to see it proven. I would, because I think one of the important things, I think, even with the police stuff, is that when you leave the questions unanswered, it's concerning. So I personally can't see how this is an accident from the way the holes are. I find it hard to believe. But I would also like to reenact to be sure that I'm not wrong. You know, I want to see that. What if I could make it happen? And it was that much of a freak accident. What if I could make it happen? I'd want to try at least. and I also want to try and see how many my theory of the 4 strikes, and the way I think she was struck. I would like to reenact that as well, but that isn't always done. But I think it should be in this case, and yeah. But I did think he got a pretty dreadful defense, but I wasn't happy with the. I thought the prosecution was repulsive. I don't like lying. When the prosecution lies to the jury and tries to hoodwink them with that stupid 911 game that they were playing, knowing damn well that that's not what he was saying. I mean, they had to know that, and they're willing to lie to the jury. See, this is why I have such a problem with that. And then everybody says, well, those are the jurors, they can discern whether they're being lied to. Not necessarily. Maybe all 12 of them thought he said cheating whore. And that's what got him convicted. Who knows? Well, the thing about the video was there was no video of that area, but the question is, was there enough video of other areas of the farm that could then tell us whether anybody else we would be able to see that in the last 24 hours anybody else walked anywhere else on the farm up to that location that was not videoed? That would be good to know. Then we'd have proof whether he was there or anybody else was there. If we take away the anybody else was there, which is still a teeny possibility, we're still looking at. If we take away that, then we have the murder was committed by Todd or Tristan, or it was actually an accidental death, and we'd be there too. Let's see, I'll go over that. Let's see. She sent an email supposedly because she wasn't sending texts anymore. And she sent it at 10 o'clock. She said, I'm in here cleaning the lights. Did they know? That is a good question. Is it possible that one of them actually saw her phone and actually ripped it out of her hands and said, you just wrote this? And she stormed off, and that person stormed off after her, yelling at her, and they pushed her into the red shed, or she started hitting her and she ran into the red shed. Is that possible? See, we don't know what actually happened after that email was sent. We don't know. We don't know. That's all we know is that was when she was alive, and that was the last contact she had with the outside. So we don't know. I'm down to the bottom now. Okay. All right. So anyway, that's it. As I said, I think I would go with, if I only had to go with what I had here, I would probably have come up with not guilty, not because I didn't think he couldn't have done it, but that it wasn't proven properly by the prosecution. Unless there's more that I don't know. Again, I think that the wounds look like it's a homicide. And some of the other behaviors, if it's true that he erased the video, that would be hugely telling. But they seem to not know if he did that or not. And his son, see, that's the problem. Somebody had to go with her to that shed, and that's the part I don't understand why that wasn't made an issue of. Because I really don't care that the son went to drink some water and his father could have slipped out, because unless he went to drink the water like right then, didn't matter 30 minutes later, because she wouldn't have been in the shed. Drives me crazy, that part. She wouldn't have been in the shed. So from the time she supposedly went to the shed, somebody had to be with her. That's it. That's the big part. So I don't know. But I wouldn't mind an appeal. And I'd like to see a better trial. And see whether he's guilty or not. I don't know. And maybe he's covering for his son. Maybe he's willing to give up his life for his son. Maybe he thinks he can't blame his son for what his son did. If his son killed his mom, he's like, she deserved it. So I'll cover for him because I want my son to have a life. He'll take over the farm and eventually, and I'll go to prison for 20 years for my kid. Maybe he's willing to do that. But I don't know. Not sure, unless it was truly an accident. Truly an accident. Leslie says, got to run. So many good questions from and points today from everyone. I definitely grew brain cells. Oh, Pat is a gift for wound analysis among many. Happy 4th to those in the U.S. Thank you. That's Tuesday coming up. Glad you were here. But a tough one, a really tough one. And yeah, I know most of you just thought I'd say he's guilty straight up, but some problems with this case, I'll tell you. Some problems. So the bread stole the show. That piece of, I don't know. I have to say, it's the worst crime scene reenactment I've ever done because I couldn't make the tines work with the bread very well. But sorry about that. Anyway, I will see you during the week with the hangout and some other stuff coming up. So I'm glad you were here and fascinating case. I don't know if I'll ever get an appeal or if I'll ever get more information. And again, if you're watching the show and you have information about that reenactment stuff that I'm very interested in, and the issue of why is nobody talking about somebody had to go with her to that dang shed, put it in the comments below because and by the way, when I say comments below, put information in, I don't mean from other YouTube channels that are spouting gossip. Okay. I don't like those grifter channels. I don't want to hear a bunch of gossip. What I want to know is if you got a link to like something specific that says exactly this was proven or not proven, or answers those questions, I'd be interested in hearing it. But no, I don't need an opinion from somebody out there who's going to do 50 shows on this to try to prove the boyfriend did it or something like that. But real information, I'm always willing to look for, especially in a case like this, which is very, very a little bit questionable. So anyway, thank you for being here. See you next time.